The revolution began in 1791 and ended in 1804 with Haiti's declaration of independence from the French colonists. During the revolution, African slaves fought against the French for freedom and basic human rights. Haiti's anti-slavery revolt influenced the abolitionist movement in other countries. Haiti formed a new national identity when it declared its independence. Tino is an illiterate slave of African origin. He lives on a plantation owned by Lenormand de Mézy in Santo Domingo, which later becomes Haiti. As the novel's protagonist, he observes and offers reflections on the situation around him. A slave on the same plantation, Macandal, captivates Tino and his fellow slaves. Macandal tells stories filled with magic and mythical kingdoms. Macandal has the ability to enchant both the men and women around him. Macandal loses his left arm in an accident where his arm gets caught in a machine and is no longer needed by his owner. The now one-armed Macandal goes to live in the surrounding mountains. While there, he learns about the herbs, plants, and mushrooms and discovers that some are poisonous. Macandal teaches Tino what he has learned during his visits. Macandal devises a plot. He plans to poison the white masters and their livestock in both his former plantation and the surrounding plantations. First, the livestock dies. Entire families of French colonists also die of poisoning. Macandal becomes known among the slaves as the Lord of Poison. Macandal's plot is discovered, but he manages to escape capture for 4 years. The slaves believe that Macandal has the magical ability to transform into animals to escape capture. The slaves also believe that he will not return to human form for 4 years. Indeed, Macandal does return in 4 years. But he is immediately captured. Tied to the stake, Macandal flies over the massive crowd and lands among them. He is captured again and burned at the stake. Instead of mourning his death, the slaves believe that the African gods have somehow saved Macandal, and they await his return. 20 years later, Tino is now the father of 12 children, who all know the tale of Macandal. Tino and his fellow slaves learn that the French government has ordered the plantation owners to free their slaves. The plantation owners refuse. The slaves on Tino's and surrounding plantations start an uprising against their owners. The first attempt at rebellion fails. The local governor orders a mass extermination of the entire black population of the colony. The governor believes the slaves threaten the colonists with voodoo and their religious beliefs. Tino's owner, Lenormand de Mézy, saves the lives of his slaves by selling them in Cuban slave markets. Lenormand de Mézy is a womanizer, drinker, and a gambler. In Cuba, Lenormand de Mézy loses a card game and gives Tino to the Cuban plantation owner who won the game. Tino saves up enough money to buy his freedom and return to Santo Domingo. Santo Domingo is now free from the French. The country is now ruled by King Henri Christophe, a member of the rich black aristocracy. Henri Christophe was born a slave in Grenada. He then became a master chef and owner of Auberge de la Couronne. Next, he became a soldier in the revolution before rising to become the first king of Haiti. Under King Christophe, blacks are still slaves. King Christophe is a brutal and corrupt tyrant with no respect for human life. Tino's hopes of freedom are dashed when he becomes enslaved again. Under King Christophe, slavery is worse than it was under French rule. As slave labor, he works among children, old men, and women to build a mountaintop fortress for the king. In the past, the death of a slave was a financial loss to the owner. Now, the lives of the slaves do not matter, as new black children will continue to be born. Tino escapes and returns to the plantation where he once lived, which is now deserted. Another uprising takes place to overthrow the king. King Christophe mysteriously gets tortured by strikes of thunder and by the ghosts of people whom he enslaved. The king commits suicide by shooting himself. His body gets buried at the mountaintop fortress, which becomes a mausoleum. A new ruling class of mulattoes takes control of the country until rebellion soon breaks out again. Like Macandal before him, Tino magically transforms into different animals to observe the situation. In the form of a goose, Tino gets rejected by a flock of geese and decides to become human again. The novel ends as Tino reflects on his life before his death and about power and the kingdom of this world.